Okay, Star Wars fans, slight change of plans here. I will let you in on what my original plan was. The original intention of this review was to talk about Revan, a novel written by Drew Capershin, and is heavily focused and centered on a character from the Knights of the Old Republic games. Very famous character among really diehard Star Wars fans. And I have to be honest about a few things and explain the reasons why I'm not reviewing this particular book. When I picked the book up, I envisioned that it would be a complete rundown on Revan's entire history as a character. I thought the entire thing was going to be basically Revan's life story and cover all the material from the video games because dirty little secret, and keep in mind, I said in the last video, I'm not a walking encyclopedia on Star Wars. I don't know every single thing that happened in the expanded universe. I have never played the Knights of the Old Republic games, so I don't have the same appreciation and understanding of Revan's character that a lot of other fans do, those who played the games. And I erroneously thought that the book was going to cover everything from point A to point B all the way from beginning to end. It does not. There are huge time gaps in the book. Specifically, the areas covered by the video game. The book begins after, at least I hope I've got this right based on my research. The book begins after Game 1. Then there's a huge time gap in the middle, and the time gap in the middle is Game 2. And then the book ends on a cliffhanger that sets up the Old Republic RPG. None of these video games I have ever played. So not only do I still don't have a complete experience with Revan's entire backstory, but the book itself, I'm not sure if I could appropriately review it. And I guess you could say that's a fault with the book that I still don't have. I should be able to just read the book and have a full understanding of everything. And to his credit, I mean, Drew Karpyshyn does try to explain as much as he can without bombarding the reader with exposition. But again, I don't feel like I'm getting the full experience here with the character. And because of that, and it was later explained by a friend of mine that he said, Patrick, if you really want to review that book, you should play the video games to get a full understanding of the character. And I can download them online and play them, and I don't know when I'll be able to do that. So until such time as I am able to play the Knights of the Old Republic games, I'm going to shelve the Revan review, and I will talk about it at a later time. When I'll be able to get to it relies entirely on whenever I finish playing the video games. And I do certainly apologize for that, but if you need any clear indication that I am not a walking encyclopedia on everything and on anything and everything that is Star Wars, this is it. The fact that Revan, who is a huge character among the diehard Star Wars fan base, and I still don't have a complete understanding of the character because I haven't played the main pieces of media that the character was featured in. Again, going back to the book a little bit, I think through the book I do have I can make assumptions on him based on the video game, or I can make assumptions on what happened in the video games. But again, without having played the video games, I don't have a full understanding of it. So it's probably for the best that I wait until I play the games and then come back and review the book. And maybe even talk about the video games a little bit too and give an impression of what I think. Because, I mean, those Knights of the Old Republic games are pretty big. A big part of Star Wars fandom. I mean, they're right up there with like the Thrawn trilogy or... that's kind of the Thrawn trilogy was kind of the quintessential Star Wars trilogy of novels. Dark Empire was kind of the main genesis of starting Star Wars in the comics world. And Knights of the Old Republic, even though there had been Star Wars video games long before it, and there have been plenty of them since, Knights of the Old Republic seems to be, again, I'm just making an assumption here, it seems to be like the main genesis for a lot of stories that have sprung forth for Star Wars in the expanded universe in the world of video games. And seems to be a major, major important piece of Star Wars history from the video games. But I kind of hoped that there would be a novelization of the Knights of the Old Republic video games. I know there's some for Force Unleashed. which never played those games either, but I have watched people play them from start to finish, so I could probably, pick up those books and review them and, get to that at some point. But, so yeah, not reviewing Revan. However, I did want to cover something from the Old Republic era, because it really is a fascinating era of Star Wars history, because it takes place thousands of years before even the prequel trilogy. So really, the events of the books from the Old Republic era really have little to no bearing on what goes on in the movies or any of the books that surround the movies, which is really kind of fascinating. So they're almost allowed to stand on their own a little bit. And even with Disney proclaiming that all the expanded universe material is no longer canon, and then everything, they're just kind of making up a new canon as they go with the new movies and new books, the TV shows. Thrawn's canon again, hooray. But, this stuff takes place so far back in the past that you could really kind of assume that it's still canon in a lot of ways. Until Disney does something to contradict it. You can kind of... It still kind of works as canon because it really has no bearing on what happens in the movies. So getting to read those books with a fresh eye, they're very fascinating to read. Because you get, basically a rundown of the Sith and the Jedi and their civil war, and how far back the rivalry between the two ideologies and the two force-related movements actually goes, and what the nature of those wars were like. So, I did want to review an Old Republic book. I had 3 options. And here they are. I had Deceived, which centers around Darth Malgus and a Sith invasion on Coruscant. I did enjoy that book. Fatal Alliance, which takes place a little bit after Deceived, I think. Although the Old Republic stories are very loosely connected, there isn't an ongoing story thread between them. They're basically just individual stories happening during the same Jedi-Sith conflict. Fatal Alliance, that one was okay. I'll probably get around to reviewing that one at some point. But the one I decided to talk about was this little gem right here. Also written by Drew Karpyshyn, so I actually get to review one of his works anyway. And Drew Karpyshyn, I guess I'll talk about him as an author. Like I said, he wrote the Revan book. He wrote this book, Annihilation. His biggest contribution to Star Wars in the world of novels, at least, I think he may have written the Knights of the Old Republic video games. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure he had a hand in writing the stories for those games. But his biggest contribution in the world of novels would probably be the Darth Bane trilogy. Now, why am I not reviewing the Darth Bane trilogy? Because I am currently in the process of reading those. I'm about... how far am I into? I'm about halfway through book 2. So, about, let's say, halfway done with the Darth Bane trilogy. But... Darth Bane and that whole trilogy there, that's probably Drew's biggest contribution to the world of Star Wars novels. But this one right here, so far, Annihilation, is my favorite one that he's written and my favorite one of the Old Republic books. And I think what I really like about it is that even though it has none of the classic characters, has no bearing on the movies or anything like it, it really does feel the most like a classic Star Wars story, from its tone and, the spy espionage angle that it takes and the action-adventure stuff that it does. It really does feel like, this one really felt like reading a Star Wars movie come to life. While reading it, my imagination was just running wild. I could just see the visuals and everything as they were being explained through the text. And, most of the Old Republic books, and I'm not trashing them when I say this, they read very much like historical text. And that's not a bad thing, because that's really what the Old Republic material is. It's a history lesson on what happened millennia before the Jedi Sith, or before the movies. And in a lot of ways, they do kind of read like they have a very historical, kind of detached view of things. The Darth Bane trilogy is certainly that way. You feel like you're reading a biography of this one man who changed everything as far as how the Sith operates. Revan kind of reads like a biography in some ways, even with the missing time gaps in there. This one really did feel like a classic Star Wars story, and really stood out to me while I was reading it. And I went into it with no expectations. I didn't know what to expect from it, and I found myself to be pleasantly surprised. Now, I think what makes this book so enjoyable, among other things, I already alluded to the espionage, spy aspect that the book really takes, and really the whole plot of the book is centered around kind of these old Republic. I guess we can call them a spy agency, for lack of a better term. How they have to infiltrate the Mega Sith weapon, which is basically a giant starship that is powered by a Sith being able to connect to it and enhance the power of the ship. And it's the most powerful ship in the Sith fleet, the Ascendant Spear. And basically this ragtag group of commandos have to infiltrate the ship and shut it down and save the Republic before this unbeatable warship is unleashed on more and more Republic fleets. Now, the story has, like I said, that whole spy and espionage angle. So you kind of feel like you're almost like... It's got some Bond movie elements to it almost, which I kind of like. And really, what made it so much fun to read were the characters. And I thought this was a very likable group of characters. The main character is Theron Shan, who is the... And I'm not revealing too much of a spoiler here, because... it's literally the first chapter of the book, but Theron is the illegitimate son of a Jedi Master, and he was also raised by another Jedi Master, yet I guess his midichlorian count wasn't very high, because he has no Force powers himself. So he's really kind of the Han Solo character, kind of the rule breaker in this special agency of the Republic that's kind of heading this mission. Also helping out, there's a Twi'lek smuggler who's kind of like his stepsister, because they were both, they both have ties to Jedi Master Zoe, who basically raised them both. I believe her name was Tefith. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The spelling was really weird. She's a lot of fun. She's this hot-headed, kind of snarky, kind of funny and weird character who she keeps talking about how she wants to kill Theron, but it's almost like in this kind of half joking way where she's really not going to do it. But I thought she was a lot of fun to read, and if any of the characters kind of got their own spin-off novel, I would kind of like to read one about her, because she made me laugh quite a bit while reading it. I thought she was a hoot. He's also paired with the Jedi Knight Nos Daral, who interestingly enough, sorry, I can't spit my words out. He is also the former master of the Sith that's heading the Ascendant Spear, Darth Carrot, who she's a fallen Jedi, and now he's on this mission, and he has to basically make up for his mistake of basically causing her to go to the dark side. I believe, if I've got my memory of the book correct, he sent her on a mission to spy on Darth Malgus, who, as I said, was the main focus of Deceived, a previous novel. And ultimately, Malgus was able to seduce her to the dark side, and now she finds herself a high-ranking Sith official. Actually, I won't spoil this, but the part of the book where she finagles her way into the Sith Dark Council is amazing, and really set her up as this great, manipulative, really evil and dark character. And I really liked her as a villain. I thought she was a good adversary. And the Ascendant Spear is a good, I guess, kind of MacGuffin to kind of get the story moving and make everybody want to do things. Because thank God it's not a straight-up doomsday weapon, because that's... The whole reusing the Death Star thing became way overused in the expanded universe. There was the Sun Crusher, there was the Darksaber, there was the Galaxy Gun, and, if you look at the movies, you had Starkiller Base in the new trilogy, and I'm just like, oh my god, can we stop with the Death Star knockoffs? And I could go on a whole nother rant about, Death Star knockoffs, because it seems like most movies now have doomsday weapons. Even Suicide Squad, watch that, doomsday weapon. Batman Begins, doomsday weapon, in a way. Kind of, sort of. But this was like, okay, this isn't so much a doomsday weapon, it's more just the most powerful ship in the fleet. More than anything else. And it's just kind of like, it keeps it more grounded in the realm of military strategy rather than just, hey, fly into Big Thing and blow it up. And Thing has power to destroy planets or whatever. So it's a little bit different from that, which I appreciated. Now, building off what I said about the characters, part of what makes them so great are their interactions off of each other. When you get to the point where Darth Carad and Jedi Master Nas Dural, former master and apprentice, when they meet in the book for the first time, their interactions are really good, and there is that tragic element to their backstories with each other. And really, it does, and going back to how this book really does feel like something cut from the classic Star Wars cloth, it really does feel like each character is a smaller part of a much larger story. And that was something that the original trilogy captured very well, where each character has something different going on, each character has a different motivation, and there's just a ton of other things going on, all centered around this one conflict. And this book kind of captured that pretty well. You get situations, going off the character relationships, I really like, I kind of touched up on this, but Theron and Tefeth, I hope to God I'm pronouncing that name right. Their interactions are great and really give the book more of a lighthearted tone and a lot of humor as well. And Theron and Nostaral, their interactions are very good too, because their personalities are so different from each other. You got the very stoic Jedi Master, and you've got the Han Solo type, kind of this sarcastic rule breaker, who's part of this, basically a spy agency within the Republic. So, great characters, great interactions between those characters, and it's all centered around a very fun and enjoyable Star Wars story, and something that, again, no big names are involved in it as far as characters go. You don't get Han Solo or Luke Skywalker in there or anything like that, or no major events. It doesn't tie to any major events in the Star Wars mythology. There's really not a whole lot that's sexy about it in terms of, I guess you would call, star power or anything like that, or any, kind of huge significance in the grand scheme of things. But I just happened to stumble across it, and I gotta be honest, I was heavily entertained by this book. So it really caught me by surprise, and I'm really glad I picked it up. I guess, sometimes when you read these things on a lark, you never know what you're going to run into. And I thought that this was a gem, and I highly enjoyed it. So, if I couldn't review Revan, and I couldn't do Revan justice, which was kind of disappointing because I was, my reason for picking Revan initially was I thought, he's a big name among the fan base, so it'll be a fun one to do. And people will actually know what I'm talking about. I don't know if as many people have read Annihilation or are as familiar with that story, but if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. I thought it was very entertaining, and if you like the expanded universe and you like the Old Republic era, I don't think you can do any better than Annihilation. Like I said, it's, of all the Old Republic books I've read, it's my favorite one of the bunch. Again, great characters, great story, fun setup, and a lot of great developments along the way. And I'm trying to keep my reviews as vague as possible without giving away too many spoilers, but believe me when I say this book's a lot of fun and very enjoyable, and very colorful too. And really, like I said, of all the Old Republic books, that's the one that made me feel like that one could be a Star Wars movie. That one feels like a Star Wars movie put to text. It was I can't recommend that read enough. I really enjoyed it. So that concludes my review of Star Wars Annihilation. My next Star Wars review will be coming in a month, and it'll be something Halloween-centric, something that I wanted to do. Month of October, it's got to be season appropriate, so I had to do something that was more along the lines of Halloween. You'll see what that is when the review gets posted, but until then, I will see you all later.